Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. Let's delve a little bit into some cosmic horror when related to the antagonist I've been covering this week, which is the Relic for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Yeah, let's jump to that right now. As a quick recap, the Relic is an antagonist for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, kind of a campaign villain idea. She is a small spark of cosmic evil that is trapped in a soul cage, which is her steel skeleton, that in turn is enrobed in a waxwork that resembles a dainty woman. She dresses and acts like an aggrieved widow who has just recently come into money and is a bit naive about the world, while all the time she is scheming and doing her best to gain more power and luxury for herself, and also now starting down a path of apotheosis. So far, the minions of hers we've covered are all waxwork horrors that she has inspired, or in this case, made. The one we're going to cover now is born from dreams directly, or rather, the nightmares of a woman who was never born, and that's the Snuffer. The Snuffer is a segmented horror comprised of oily flesh grown around rusty iron plates. The aberration superficially resembles a monstrous centipede, but it has crimson tentacles instead of legs. Its eyes, along with a toothless gap of a mouth, is fused around a pair of rune-scribed shears that kind of have growths around the side of them, muscly growths, that make it seem almost like a pair of mandibles. A clutch of prehensile cilia on the back end works in the pale imitation of a hand as well. So it's just long and honestly just very, very gross and slimy. The Relic didn't create the Snuffer as she did her other creatures, even though it came from her workshop. The envious construct long wished for the ability to sleep and dream as mortals do, and after a generation of alchemical experimentation and delving deep into ancient forbidden texts, she discovered a reagent, the fumes of which sent her into a trance-like state, not unlike elves, and it was the closest that she could get to sleeping and dreaming. While in this unique state, the Relic had a vision of a lightless void, where she knew there was a multitude of strange things that were squirming and wiggling against each other. At first, she felt it was like a clutch of worms, but more oddly, like chopped up bits and entrails and pieces of a dead god that were writhing against one another, until one of those pieces was sick of being blind and set itself aflame so it might be able to see. The vision at that point abruptly ended, even though it was several hours later, and much to her surprise, the Relic discovered a mass of alien tissue growing amid the random parts of her workshop. By dawn's breaking, the first Snuffer finished gestating, and the Relic gained a loyal tool against the living. Unfortunately, she's also found this process repeatable. These Snuffers, they are silent killers. They feed directly off of breath, preferring to suckle it from the lungs of their prey. The Relic uses the aberration's uncanny dietary requirement to remove societal rivals and other troublemakers via silent assassination. These crawling horrors prove quite adept at creeping into a target's house in the dead of night, bypassing locks and other defenses, and then suffocating the unlucky soul in their bed. Oftentimes, those that discover the bodies the next morning think that they merely just died in their sleep. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Snuffer statistics for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. As you can see here, the Snuffer is a CR6 aberration. Unlike the previous monsters, which are all constructs, it does have perception and stealth, and does have a damage resistance to attacks made that aren't made with magical weapons. It does have Breath Hound, so it can detect any creature that breathes within 10 feet of it. It does have innate spellcasting. In this case, it is Dissonant Whispers, Knock, Silence, Blindness and Deafness, Darkness, and Pass Without Trace, all making it a very excellent assassin. It does have Spider Climb, as one might expect, as well as Urban Camouflage, so it can shift and move the color of its oily skin whenever in an urban environment to gain advantage on its stealth rolls. It does have multi-attack with its Bite, which is a giant pair of shears, so it does a lot of slashing damage. Lastly, it does have Steel Breath, so its target has to make a Constitution save or take a large amount of necrotic damage. If it fails that save by 5 or more, it also falls unconscious as air is ripped directly from its lungs. So this can be a very devastating opponent against NPCs or even mini heroes. Likewise, it does still kind of fit into the edges of the Relict's usual theme. It is something that's made from pieces of a workshop. It does have cutting shears as well as iron plates, and you could always throw in other bits and bubbles to show that it's made from pieces you would find in a waxwork shop, for example. And on top of that, it does kind of reinforce that cosmic horror theme because it is born directly from her visions and her trances, which are just the start of the Relic starting to realize what exactly is at her core, which we're going to explore next as well. I hope you've enjoyed the Snuffer, along with all the other creatures you've covered for the Relic so far. You can find them all for free, along with hundreds of other horror-themed creatures for Dungeons & Dragons at boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you're more interested in the non-Dungeons & Dragon horror-related content that I have, or the horror fiction that I write, you can always go to www.zacharyoshay.com. I hope that we all have a great weekend ahead of us. Thank you for your time and your attention.